In every movement, there have been activists who have fought tirelessly for racial justice. In this series, we dive into the lives of activists who stood on the front lines of two pivotal eras of the Black liberation movement, the Civil Rights Movement.
The church is always supposed to be the safe sanctuary if you're sitting in there. But we were amazed while we were in there.
And the uprisings following the tragic death of Mike Brown.
We've seen officers respond in such a heavy way that dogs out, tanks, tear gas, M16s, like this was Iraq.
For these activists, what was there to gain? Or, better yet, what was there to lose in their fight for freedom? On this episode, Marching with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Welcome to I Bear Witness, Freedom Fighters on the Front Line. I'm your host, and my guest today is Sular Gordon. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Sular Gordon is a native of Memphis, Tennessee. She relocated to St. Louis, Missouri in 2005 to serve as project coordinator for Committed Caring Faith Communities, Access to Recovery, where she worked closely with the Missouri Division of Alcohol and Drug Abuse and credentially faith-based recovery support service providers. Currently, she is working with Engage, a project that focuses on community-based methods of promoting self-management and community participation among adults with low income who have stroke-related disabilities. Here she works with scholars from WashU and other universities. Please welcome Ms. Sular Gordon.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming. All right, so we'll start today with a question since we're on Freedom Fighters on the Front Line.
Yes.
What is your definition of freedom fighters?
Well, Tiffany, my definition of a freedom fighter is a person that fights for freedom for a person or for a people that is being oppressed or held back by an unjust political or government system.
Okay. All right. Now that's a big definition, right? That's a lot is encompassed in there.
Yes.
You're here today because you have a very interesting experience, right?
Yes.
And you marched with Dr. King on his final march in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. How old were you at that time?
I was about 18, 19.
18, 19 years old. So
yes.
That was you were very young,
yes,
right?
Yes.
But there are a lot of people that were involved in the movement at a very young age at that time. I remember actually reading an article about a 9-year-old girl who had been incarcerated for over a week because she was a part of protests. Now, was this your first time participating in like a social justice action of any kind?
Yes, it was my first time, and it was not my intention.
Okay, what do you mean by it wasn't your intention?
I had graduated, I hadn't secured a job, so I was there at home with my mother while my other siblings were in school, and she woke me up and says, "Come on, you gotta go downtown to the march," and gave me the bus fare, and I got ready and got on the bus by myself, rode downtown, and when I got off of the bus, there were thousands of people, so I just immersed myself into the crowd.
Okay.
So that's how I got involved, by the instructions and the motivation of my mother.
See, that's very interesting because I think that's something that's not spoken about a lot in the movement because there were several people who were probably your mother's age who actually were afraid to get involved because they might lose their jobs, right?
Most certainly.
Yeah, they may be incarcerated, you know, while the younger people were the face of the movement because they didn't necessarily have any jobs. So what did your mother say? She said you got to go, but did she give you any reason as to why it might be important?
Well, you know, we had been watching TV.
Okay.
And so we kept up with what was going on. And that was a big movement, and it for Martin Luther King and his staff to come to Memphis,
right,
because of the strike that was going on with back in the day, we said the sanitation workers is what we referred to them as.
Yeah.
And no, we referred to them as the garbage.
Okay, garbage.
We actually used that word, and it was later we start using the sanitation workers.
Okay.
But my mother was aware when I look back on how Miss Willie Mae Clark moved in the community and what she was aware of that we were not aware of. She was aware of what was going on, and she didn't want me moping around the house, not being connected or motivated by anything, so she pushed us to be involved. And when she told me to get up and go down there, I did not really know what to expect, but I trust her enough to know to go, and I had been watching. I knew what it was about. I knew they would be there.
Okay.
And the vibe and the environment when I stepped off that bus was energizing. You immerse yourself, you belong there, everybody. You didn't feel like you were outsider, but you just immersed yourself into what was going on. You didn't feel lost or overwhelmed.
Okay. This is interesting. So I remember reading about this march, and that's where they had the I am the man signs and everything like that. Now, I'm trying to remember though, I remember reading something along the lines that they had the strike because they were working full time, and they were still kind of qualified for the government services. Well, do you remember why exactly they had the strike?
It was basically because of the unfair treatment that the men were receiving there on the job. They were not being paid.
Okay.
What, $2 and something an
It
hour?
was
Can you imagine?
Unfair. Yeah, right.
And they were suffering injuries on the job, and nothing was being done about it.
Right.
And they were being treated less than a man.
Okay.
And they asked Martin Luther King to come because they wanted to strike and to march for better treatment.
Right.
For people to realize what it would be like if we did not have that service.
I know, because I was thinking about that, because this was kind of like, this was something that was different. He wasn't really, it was like a last minute plan to come here.
Yes, it really wasn't on his agenda at the time.
Okay.
But they kept calling and asking him, and they decided to come.
Right. And I think that that's important as well, because when you have, a lot of times when we talk about wealth that's not being built in the Black community and so forth, when you have someone working 40 hours a week and basically not making any money for their family, then how do you build this wealth, right? So it's not laziness or anything like that.
That's right.
You're a part of poverty because the things that are thrust upon you.
And the system.
Right, exactly, right. So now you said you got down there and the energy was great and everything like that. What happened?
It was very well organized, Tiffany. They were on their bullhorns giving us instructions on what to do. So we listened, and everybody was very cooperative. We listened. They told us, those that had just arrived, to go to the back of the line or go into Claiborne's temple and wait for instructions to come out to get into the line. Because the march had already started, they had already made it up to Beale Street. And of course, Martin Luther King and Reverend Whalum, that was there in Memphis, Tennessee, was a part of the organizing of the march. They were already on the front line. We didn't get near the front line. We were in the Claiborne Temple waiting on instructions to come out and merge into the march when all hell broke loose.
Okay, wow. So all hell broke loose.
Yes.
Give us a little bit more information about what happened. So you were in Claiborne Temple.
Waiting on instructions to come out and get into the back of the line. They would tell us when, so we could all just move smoothly up the street. Okay. But up in the front of the line, there were people that was there for other reasons. Okay. I think they were not for a peaceful movement, which we know that was the gist of Martin Luther King's movement, was the nonviolence. Right. Yes, and they start rioting, breaking windows. Okay. And they sent word back to us to come out of the building and to go away from the line, from the march.
So these were the people that were in the church?
Yeah.
About how many of you
we were packed.
In the church? Okay.
We were packed. Okay. And you know that the church is always supposed to be the safe sanctuary if you're sitting in there. But we were maced while we were in there.
You were maced by who?
The police, or who? Yes, the police department. Whoever were doing.
Did they come into the church?
No,
it was they just threw
Yes, and of course it just came in. We didn't know where it was coming from. Okay. We understood that we were being maced, and I was sitting with the cousin, Barbara Brown. Okay. I found her when I went into the church and sat with her, and she says, "Keep down up under the smoke," and we came out of the church and went back. We were going to go cross country to get back home. Okay. And when we started going away from the march, the way they asked us to, there were policemen all up on top of the building. They had already situated themselves, and they had guns pointing at us, where we were not causing any problems. The problem was up at the front of the line, but they amazed us. They were pointing the guns at us. I'd never seen anything like that before. I was terrified. So I stuck with Barbara, and we kept low up under and just kept our hands to our face to try to keep as much of the mace out of our eyes and lungs, and we went cross country going back to our house.
So now when you were there and you said you guys were maced, what was going on around you? So the people, when you evacuated the church, and basically trying to get fresh air, essentially.
Yes. And so to see the gist of what was going on, Tiffany, we really couldn't understand what happened until we got home and saw it on TV.
On the news.
Where the rioting, where they were had sticks in their hands, where they were, and it was not outsiders, it was us that had started the confusion and so immediately they ushered Martin Luther King away from that. Okay. So we never did get a chance to see him, but we were all there for that purpose. And
when you say that, and that's something interesting, because that's a conversation. In this series, we'll be talking to people who were a part of the '60s civil rights movement, and then people who were also a part of the movement in Ferguson, the uprisings that happened there. Yes. So Martin Luther King, he was about nonviolence and everything like that, and I know his movement was a little bit different, but when you talk about the people that were breaking the windows and everything like that, so what, that was in the 60s, right? So we move forward, 2014, 15, 16, right? As someone who was a part of that movement where it was kind of like, oh yeah, we got to stop this, we got to get away from this. What were your feelings about Ferguson when it started?
Oh, it was heartbreaking.
Okay. Heartbreaking in what way?
It was heartbreaking to see how a a young black male was gunned down in the streets with his hands up, not causing or not being confrontational.
Exactly.
It was just unfathomable to see that was happening after so many years, or the police department or our justice system would be that bold to do something like that. I understood it, and I understood the rioting. They were completely different from what we were like in in the 60s. They were young warriors that had taken their shirts off, meaning that we are here. This is that we're at war, and there was no fear. We would run from the hydrants, and the dogs, But these young people were advancing, and they would pick up the maize that was thrown at them and throw it back. And I was saying, oh my God, they are not afraid. They mean war.
They mean business.
Yeah, they meant business because they were not like in our day. We had a different mindset.
Exactly.
We had been, for not a better word, lack of a better word, institutionalized, but not institutionalized.
I love that you say that too, because I think that sometimes when the generations pass, because I remember when Ferguson happened, and then you had some civil rights leaders who came out and said, oh, this is atrocious, like they shouldn't behave in this way. And it's like, don't you know that when you were out there in the 60s, that it was people watching you on TV saying this exact same thing, right? So can't you understand what's going on at this time? So you being a person that was a part of that movement and actually seeing and admiring the bravery of what occurred in Ferguson, it warms my heart, actually. I'm glad to see that.
I was there at Mason Temple. That was in March when we did that that march in Memphis, Tennessee. And then April, the next month, Martin Luther King came back. And we gathered at Mason Temple. And waited on him for 2 hours to come, not knowing what was going on, but we sat there in Mason Temple and waited. And they kept going back to the hotel, the Lorraine Hotel, saying to him, they're waiting on you, Martin. And not knowing that he had gotten a death threat, not knowing when he made that last speech, I've been to the mountaintop and I'm not fearing any man. Said, like everyone, I would like to live long. Longevity has its place, but I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. And my eyes, he said, have seen the glory of the Lord, not knowing that the man was giving his eulogy himself. And as we sat there and watched him, it was tornado warnings all around, thunder and lightning. We didn't care, we sat there because he was our Moses. And he was a young man, being in his 30s, anointed by God to lead a people to a place.
Did this happen? So was he saying this at the church? While you were there at Mason?
And the next day he was shot. On the balcony of Lorraine. The very next day.
See, that I thought that you were present. So you were really present there. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Oh wow.
So we went back in April to hear that speech. Whatever was going on, by that time I was hooked. I had really become a part of, an active part of what was going on.
So your experience in March was your mom said, okay, get up out this bed, go down here. We need you to protest. And then by April,
I didn't need any motivation.
You didn't need any motivation. Did Barbara go with you then, your cousin Barbara?
I went with another friend. His name was Leroy Brown. Yeah, he was an activist. Leroy even got me to go to a rally that George Wallace had in Memphis, Tennessee. And I had to tell him, I don't know why I went to with you
right.
to George Wallace.
Tell us a little bit, for those who don't know, give us a little background of who is George Wallace.
George Wallace was the governor of
What? No, I didn't look. I don't.
Alabama, Arkansas, or
One of those down south.
Yes,
Yeah.
and he's the one that stood against integration.
Yes, exactly.
And he had come to Memphis to campaign, and of course we were the only blacks in there.
Right.
But because he was a true advocate for the
He
black
was a segregationist.
movement. Leroy Brown
Okay,
was,
yeah.
which later became Reverend Brown. And of course they put guards over us while we sat there the whole time.
So what were you guys there? Were you in protest or?
We really wanted to hear what he had to say. A lot of people, they say something about a opponent, but it's just all hearsay.
Okay, right.
But the atmosphere and what he was saying, it was true.
Okay.
What was in the man's heart.
Oh wow. So let's go back to when you were there at the church, Mason Temple, and he delivered that speech.
Yeah.
What was the energy in that? I know you said that you guys that was your Moses.
Yeah, we sat quietly waiting to hear what he had to say.
Right.
What was his instructions?
Okay, his instructions.
What was the next move?
Right.
So you would think sitting that long that a crowd like that would have gotten restless. But we didn't get restless. We didn't care how long it took.
Okay.
We wanted to hear what he had to say.
And he spoke,
And
you
he
said it
came,
was,
yes.
it was powerful.
Yes, he came and let us know that he started his speech he just ended it like I gave you some little notes of it just then, that like anybody, he would like to live long, but we didn't know the heaviness of it.
Okay.
What he was really saying to us. We were just listening.
Right.
And now when I even look back on it 2 days ago and pulled the speech up and listened to it again, it gripped my heart. What the young man must have thought, married with young children,
Right.
and had gotten a threat like that. Them knowing, with them being on the front line like that death was there.
Knocking at the door.
Yes.
So now he was at the Lorraine Motel, and anybody knows now when you go to Memphis, you can go and visit the memorial and everything like that. So what was it like in Memphis when the word came in that he had been assassinated?
Oh, the riot broke out even more. Tiffany,
Yeah.
they began to burn our community,
Oh, wow.
which we thought was awful. Why are you burning our stores and the laundromat, where these are the places that we have to go? Why are you not going where the opposition is? But our community suffered greatly with the rioting that was going on around us. The loss of property, the grocery stores that were burned down, the fear. It was great fear of what would it be now.
Right,
that
what's
they
next?
That they had shot him down. We really looked for it to be a tragedy more than it was. So for a few days there, it was mayhem.
Wow.
Yes, it was.
And was your community where you stay? I know you said that everything around it, but was everybody around you safe? Was anybody negatively affected besides the heart strings, of course?
No, I don't recall anybody being injured. Just a lot of arrest.
Okay.
Did happen
All right.
from the rioting and the curfew, breaking of the curfew that had been set.
Okay, so they set a curfew.
Yes, to get us off the street, to get the people off the street. And everything just got real quiet and eerie, very eerie.
So how did this experience change you? How did it affect you? So after this, how did it affect you?
It changed the way I looked at things when I began to look for a job, when I began to work on jobs. I worked for National Trust Life for 10 years, right on Popular there in Poplar Avenue there in Memphis, Tennessee. It changed how I interact.
So how, in what ways?
Well, it made me very aware of the people. I stayed in Klondike in a black community. I went up to the black store. I didn't really go outside of my community that much until we went downtown, caught the bus and went downtown to whatever, and which was not always a good experience, because when I would go with my mother, she would be referred to as honey or girl or sweetie. So now that I'm older, and I went into the Target last year to buy a phone into the Target here.
Okay.
And the young girl, about 18 and 19, she said, "Well, sweetie," I said, "You're not old enough to call me sweetie."
Oh, wow. Right.
That's a very negative
Has a negative connotation
yes,
to you
it does
because
to
of
black women from the South.
Right.
Because
okay.
that's what we were referred to. And so now that I've gotten older and come a ways, I don't allow it.
Okay. Right. Yeah, so now when you started working, how did it affect you as far as, were you pushing for your rights? Did you see the treatment of black people in a different way? Or how do you say it changed? In what way?
Well, prejudice and negativity was never taught in my home.
Okay.
So when I went into the job market and I worked there, when I first started working there, I was the only black.
Oh, wow.
In the records department. And I began to see people as people. I did not, and as I do today, I don't lump everybody in the same, what would I say, in the same category.
Okay.
Because I realized what was in my heart is not, you can't really judge me by what somebody else do because my skin is black. You have to come close enough to know me.
Okay.
And that's the way I feel about other people, that I have given them a chance. Until you show me who you really are, then I can communicate, I can develop a relationship. And the only time I saw the difference when I worked in the insurance company, 2 different times I was the only black, was during voting time.
Okay.
That's when the atmosphere changed. And
Okay.
when we went to the poll and voted and came back, then hey girl, how you doing? But it was very tense in an office if you're the only black or with anybody during voting time in the South. And I realized that in the South, we had a better relationship with the Caucasians than you do here in St. Louis.
In what way?
We knew each other.
Okay.
We knew where each other stood, where each other was from. It was not an undercurrent. We just knew each other. Yes, it was the South, but there was a relationship always.
So I guess I'm hearing 2 different things.
Yes,
though,
you are.
right? Okay,
Yes, you
so
are.
because I'm hearing that we know each other, but then in that knowing, I know where you stand.
I see you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And I'm not trying to fool you.
Right. And then, that's interesting that you say that, because I've had conversations about that before, like in the South, where it's more open.
Yes.
Where it is one of those things where it's in your face.
Yes.
I think in some ways that it actually helps Black people to understand that, you know, we still in this fight together.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
Whereas as you move up north, the more is pushed to the back.
It's subtle.
Yeah,
but
it's subtle,
there.
and then you start thinking, oh well, why are they fighting? Everything is fine. There aren't any race issues, you know. And then you get smacked in the face with it, right?
And then the Ferguson incident
Ferguson, yeah,
really brought it to the forefront.
brought it to the forefront, and it's right there again.
It's right there.
Right. And then we start to realize, then you have stars coming out and everything like that, because then you start to realize that my son can be pulled over and killed by the police, and as well as LeBron James' son can be. You know, money doesn't change that, right?
It does not.
So a lot of our issues remain the same, no matter socioeconomic status.
Yes, we come a long way these 50 some odd years.
Right.
But we yet have a long way to go.
Okay.
A lot of times I say to myself, oh, if Martin Luther King could see what's going on now, he would turn over in his grave.
You say turn over?
Turn over.
Okay, why turn over?
For all that they went through, and for him to give his life, and for us to march, and all of the people that shedded blood, that we may be able to vote or have equal rights, and to see that the system is still there. We're yet locked out. Our schools, our education was better then than now.
You know what? I think that's interesting that you say that, because it is interesting, because I've heard elders talk about, like I'm from East St. Louis, I've heard elders talk about even being taught Latin in high school.
Oh, yes.
Right. They don't have that in high school right now, because you had a lot of these teachers that were there for their community. They were about uplifting the community. They wanted to make sure, because they had been denied so much, that the students were educated and everything. And you see that differently now.
I see it much different. Nobody left school without knowing how to read, write, and arithmetic.
Okay, exactly.
You didn't get passed on.
Right.
And so now young people are being passed on. They're being graduated with a elementary education, and as far as reading, not only reading, but comprehension.
Right, exactly.
They go together. So, and with my grandchildren, my granddaughters came to visit me one summer, and we would sit at the table and read the Bible, and I would tell the one in the 7th grade to read, and the one in the 11th grade to read. The one in the 11th grade couldn't read.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is sad. You know, there are a lot of people now who are really focusing in on that. I know it's an initiative with the NAACP now that is focusing on this reading and everything. Because if you can't read, you know, where are you going to go? What can you do if you can't read? You know,
and the basic math, the basic arithmetic. So you give them jobs at the McDonald's where they're punching symbols and pictures. But if that was to go out and you ask for change, or my husband at different times said, given the cash and the change, so they would just give him the dollar bills back, it would confuse them. because they would not do could not do the simple math.
Yeah, I think, you know what, so I'm not going to beat up on this generation that much, because I think as we use more
technology,
yes, that, you know, so since we have the calculators, there's no reason to remember that, you know, simple math sometimes. I know I used to really spell really well. And now it's like, sometimes I'm like, well, how do you spell this word? Because I'm so used to using spell check all the time. So, you know, you lose knowledge that you don't necessarily need. And that's actually just the way of the world. So we used to, I mean, it's actually natural, you know, in some ways. Some things you need. But, you know, we used to be able to memorize whole books because you didn't get a book.
Phone numbers.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, thousands, hundreds of years ago, we used to be able to memorize whole books because, you know, to have a book was rare. So you could memorize a whole book and tell a story. And as books became more prevalent, then, you know, you no longer had to memorize the book. But yeah, I always wonder, like, well, if you go to jail, how you gonna call somebody because you don't have anybody's phone number?
You don't have anybody. And you know, when I was thinking about coming here, doing the interview, and I know you would ask me the question, well, what about the times then? And you mentioned books, and I thought about Charles Dickens.
Okay, yeah.
And the Tales of Two Cities.
Yes.
I said, I'll be able to tell her those were the best of times.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of
times.
That is like the best opening line of a book in history.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But I can identify with it in so many situations even now.
For when you were in the
midst of that.
The best of time. Yeah. So let's talk about this. You were there in the 60s. You witnessed Ferguson as well. What would you say now to young people? Like, what exactly would you say to kind of get them to stand up for their rights, the importance of that?
The importance of it is that education is important.
Okay.
In order to change the system, you have to work within the system.
Okay.
It's so important. It's okay to buck it, but you won't be able to make any changes on the outside of it.
Okay.
Protesting is good, but then when you finish protesting, then what are you going to do?
Okay.
You don't want to taint your name. Your name is important.
Okay.
It is important for you to have a good name, and that will take you through life. But you never lose your focus. You never lose your fight or what it's all about. Okay. It's a matter of standing your ground, not ever forgetting the history. And those of us that are adults, we're not to be ashamed of where we come from and what has happened. It's only they can survive if they know the history, the what and the why of it all, and not to drop the ball and to think that it doesn't matter what they do and what they say. It does matter. They matter.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And hopefully my listeners will listen to you, because I think that that's one of the important things about this series is about bringing our history to the forefront.
Yes.
Listening to all of you who were there on the front line about your experiences. And thank you. Thank you for being there and trying to make a change in the community.
Yes.